Hello, everyone. My name is Kendra Burgess, and welcome. I am currently a board member for the National Council on Independent Living, and I'm also the public policy coordinator at the Whole Person, which is a center for independent living in Kansas City, Missouri, serving people with disabilities. For my visual descriptor, I am a Black woman with short, curly, natural hair, and I'm wearing a black dress with gold earrings, and my pronouns are she and her. Again, welcome to the Community Living Summit, brought to you by the University of Kansas Research and Training Center on Independent Living, and in partnership with the National Council on Independent Living. I'll be your host today. Again, my name is Kendra Burgess, and I also am here with Jenny Sitchell, who is from Nclrc, and she will be assisting us today. First, we'll start with accessibility and logistics tips so that you can fully participate in this webinar and we can ensure that everything runs smoothly for everyone. Please reach out to Jenny if you have any questions or need additional support. Regarding captions, captions are available in Zoom today. Click Show Subtitle in your Zoom menu bar to turn them on. Captions are also running in AI media. That URL is way too long to read, but it's available on the session webpage, and we will also share it in the chat today. AI media allows you to enlarge the font and change the color and contrast of the captioning. ASL interpreters are also present today and will be here for all of our conference events. We are presenting in gallery view, so the interpreter should always be visible in your screen. Please let us know if you cannot see the interpreters. And presenters, you will need to be in side-by-side mode if you are sharing a PowerPoint today. If your host shares a PowerPoint, you will see the menu bar that says you are viewing host name and then the screen. Click View Options and select Side-by-Side View. This will allow you to see the PowerPoint presentation and the interpreters at the same time. If you are using dual screens, you may also want to click Optimize for dual screens. You can adjust the size of the PowerPoint and interpreters by using the slider feature in the middle of your screen. We do not recommend joining this session by mobile or tablet if you want to see the presenters and the PowerPoint at the same time. But you can swipe left on most mobile devices and tablets to change your view. Public chat is turned off for this session, but you will still be able to send chat messages to the host and the panelists. We ask that you reserve the chat for requests for technical support. And please do not use the panelist chat to submit content questions for the presenters. We provide 3 easy ways that are accessible to everyone to submit those content questions. Number 1, if you choose and you're on Zoom, you can simply type your questions into the Zoom Q&A tab. Again, that's the Zoom Q&A tab on your screen. Number 2, you're also welcome to email your questions to jenny@nclrc.org. Again, that's JENNY@ncil.org. And then finally, if you're participating by only the phone today, you may press *9 to indicate you have a question. And lastly, this program will be divided into 6 segments with different presenters. So questions will be allowed at the end of each segment. And again, once all of our presenters have finished sharing their content for the day. We hope these accessibility and logistics tips have been helpful for you. And so now let's get to why we are here today. With that, let me introduce Dr. Jean Hall. Dr. Hall is the director of the Research and Training Center on Disability Living and the Institute for Health and Disability Policy Studies. Jean is the Principal Investigator, or PI, for the Research and Training Center and Promoting Interventions for Community Living, a funded project, an NIDILRR funded project, and the PI for Kansas City Disability and Health Program, a CDC funded project which seeks to improve access to health promotion activities and services for Kansas with disabilities. At this time, I turn it over to you, Dr. Hall. Take it away.
Thank you, Kendra, and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Jean Hall. I'm an older white woman with short, light brown hair. I'm wearing blue glasses and a green shirt, and I'm sitting in front of a white background. My pronouns are she and her. As Kendra noted, I am the director of the Research and Training Center on Promoting Interventions for Community Living, or the RTC Pickle. And today we're presenting a Community Living Summit, and we'd like to acknowledge our funding from the National Institute on Disability, Independent Living and Rehabilitation Research, or NIDILRR. Next slide, please. And before we start, we want to give a big thank you to our Scientist Consumer Advisory Panel members for this project. They include Brian Avery, Fabricio Balcazar, Ron Garcia, Catherine Graham, David Keir, Sierra Royster, Phil Rumrell, Tom Seekins, Jack Stratton, and Renita Wilkes. They guided us throughout the project and gave us great advice and kept us going throughout the years of the project. So thank you. Next slide, please. So now we'll talk a little bit about community living and participation. I think all of us would agree that social connections play an important role in our overall well-being and quality of life, and that lack of these connections is associated with negative physical and mental health outcomes. I think we've seen that very clearly over the last 2.5 years of living during a pandemic. But we think that CILs can and do play a critical role in supporting community living and participation for people with disabilities. And as we'll talk about today, research shows that people with disabilities who have more usable homes, for example, are able to use their bathrooms more efficiently, are more likely to participate in the community. Research also shows that self-determination skills such as choice making, self-advocacy, and self-management are positively associated with better community participation outcomes. Next slide, please. So what is Pickle? As we noted, Pickle stands for Promoting Interventions for Community Living. And the Pickle Project tested 2 community living and participation programs at 6 centers for independent living across the country. Those 6 centers were The Whole Person, Summit Independent Living, Disability Link, Accessibility, the Ability Center, and Voices for Independence. And we'll be hearing a little bit more from Accessibility later today. The Pickle Program consists of 2 consumer-directed interventions designed primarily for people with mobility disabilities. First is the Home Usability Program, or HUP. This is a goal-setting program to make a person's home more usable to them. And then the second is Out and About, or OAA, which is a goal-setting program related directly to community participation. And the overall goal of both of these programs is to increase the community participation of people with mobility and other disabilities. Next slide, please. The agenda for today is broken into separate parts, as Kendra mentioned. We'll provide information about these 2 programs, how Centers for Independent Living can use them, and important resources that are available to them as they do use them. So first we'll hear from Lily Greiman at the University of Montana about the Home Usability Program. She'll be followed by Kelsey Goddard at the University of Kansas, who will talk about the Out and About program. Ryan Henley from the University of Kansas will talk about resources available through the National Community Living Resource Center. Then I'll switch gears and hear from Tammy Thimmel, Keisha Walker, and Susan Ferguson at Accessibility in Indiana, and they'll talk about their experience working with consumers with the Pickle program. And finally, we'll close with consumer case studies or just stories of consumers who use these interventions and what their outcomes were. And that will be presented by Randy Gray and Lindsay Coon from the University of Kansas. So now I will hand the screen back to Kendra, and thank you again for being here today.
Thank you, Dr. Hall. So for our first segment, we are going to be hearing from Lily Greiman on home usability programs. Lily Griman works as a project director at the Research and Training Center on Disability in Rural Communities and has been with the center since 2012. She works across numerous projects with partners across the country and is passionate about the collaborative work of the RTC Rural, and does that to improve the lives of people with disabilities in rural communities. Her focus areas are housing, community preparation, rural community development, and spatial and demographic analysis. She's originally from Helena, MT, but has lived in Missoula for about 15 years, where she attended the university and learned about geography there. Lily, we welcome you to present your screen now.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Hi, my name is Lily. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a white woman in my 30s with longish light brown hair, and I'm wearing glasses. And I am going to start us off today by talking a little bit about the home usability program and using home usability to support community living. And we'll go over a little bit of some of the results and overview of the home usability project and some of our hopes for the future. And then here, so on the screen, there's an image, a graphic of two buildings next to each other. Could be homes, could be single family homes, could be apartment buildings that are red and yellow with blue windows. And then I have a quote that says, "It's life-changing!" exclamation point, which was a quote from a participant in the home usability program. So next slide, please. What is the home usability program? It is a CIL program, a program that was designed to be implemented at a Center for Independent Living, and is kind of designed to be a one-on-one program where CIL staff work on home usability goal setting with consumers at the center. And the real emphasis of this program is a distinction between usability and accessibility. And essentially, accessibility is, of course, incredibly important, but accessibility often relies on kind of national standards and really specific standards that are intended to be accessible for the widest range of individuals. Usability is actually more about what you as an individual may need in your home. So you could have an accessible home, a quote unquote accessible home, but still need to make some additional usability modifications to make it work for you. So this program also focused on low cost modifications, purchasing assistive technology and developing supports. And we, through the grant, had available $350 per consumer. So a big part of this too was focusing on much lower cost strategies that might be more accessible, there's that word again, to centers for independent living as well for developing this program. It's consumer driven. The design of the program is meant to be that the individual who needs the change is controlling the process. And really the research question, Jean kind of talked about this a little bit, but specifically around home usability, we focused on, does participation in a consumer directed home usability intervention increase community participation with consumers with mobility disabilities? And that was really the focus of this, is we believe that participation in the community starts at home. If you are using up all of your energy or struggling to get in and out of your house, it's going to be really hard for you to go out and access the community and engage as you would like. So we collected a variety of data on this project. We asked all of our participants to answer paper surveys, and then we also did some interviews, and that's been this more recent phase we'll talk about. We asked about levels of pain and exertion throughout the home, and then also questions on health. So next slide. So how did we do this program? So originally, this is the kind of third or fourth phase of this project. It was developed in a previous grant cycle with a team of 5 CIL specialists from 5 different centers. the development of this was consumers worked really closely with CIL staff to work through the program. Intervention just means program, online or with printed manuals. And throughout the process, consumers developed what we were calling a home usability plan, where you could take quiz, conduct health self-assessments. We used the AARP Home Fit Guide for this, and then identify resources, both personal, social, and financial resources that a consumer could potentially contribute to the process, and included a home visit to do this by CIL when feasible. Because of the pandemic, for many reasons, this was not feasible. And so we were working a lot remotely and just talking to folks about what their needs were. So some of the results presented here are from a phase 1 where we worked with the whole person, and then Summit in Missoula to work through a trial with 195 individuals, but only 81 completed the home usability program. And then we'll also talk a little bit, I think, later about phase 2 with some of those case studies where we worked with 4 different CILs with about 90 participants throughout this program. Next slide. So here I just have a screenshot. What's on the screen is a link to the website. It's www.usablehome.com, and usable is spelled USEABLEHOME. So use as a word, able as a word, and home as a word. And so this website was developed to be a facilitation manual or a self-assessment tool that can be used by either CIL staff or an individual consumer to work through the program. And I encourage folks to go visit the website. It is still and may always be somewhat of a work in progress, though we have high hopes to get it cleaned up and out into the world. And we also have a PDF manual of all of the activities and content from this. So this is the tool that CIL staff used to work with consumers. And I encourage folks to check it out too and see what they think. And always, always, always would love feedback about things that don't work or that don't make sense. So I really encourage folks to go to www.usablehome.com. Don't forget the E and U's. And on the screen, again, you'll see there's the little home usability program icon of the red and yellow buildings side by side. All right, next slide. So I wanted to highlight a couple of a range of items that folks identified as home usability projects while going through this program. This program was incredibly open, and we tried to be incredibly non-prescriptive about what counts as a home usability project. To be honest, if it impacts your ability to use your home, it's a home usability issue. So we kind of have this separated down into different categories. We had home usability programs that focus on bathing and grooming, including things like installing grab bars, purchasing shower chairs, non-slip mats for the shower, to support cleaning, robot vacuums, long-handled dusters, storage solutions. So either, maybe Tupperwares or something for storage or shelving. Things to support mobility within the home, such as walkers and canes. Some general safety areas, fire extinguishers, medical alert devices, things to support entrancing, including hand railings on front steps, video doorbells, threshold ramps, cooking, lots of different adaptive cooking equipment, and actually also improved kitchen lighting, sleeping, a new mattress. Sleep is a really important part about being able to use your home. And I think sometimes goes maybe overlooked. Moving, we actually also supported some consumers to move into a more accessible space. And so we were able to help cover some of the costs of moving. Dressing, assistive equipment for dressing, like shoe hooks, and I think there's other things, but I don't remember. And then furniture, we had folks that were able to purchase lift recliners and then make accessibility modifications to furniture throughout their home, or purchase furniture as needed. And then also just other assistive equipment such as reacher grabber tools. Next slide. So some results. And so these results are from the study. We are wrapping up data collection currently in our phase 3 of this project, but really phase 1 was a small pilot study that happened several years ago. Phase 2 was was implementing the program at the Whole Person in Kansas City and in Missoula. And these results are from that. And then phase 3 is kind of the study we're wrapping up now, which we'll get into the case studies, I think, a little bit more. So what we saw, though, from our quantitative of the numbers of the paper surveys that people completed, we really saw that this consumer-directed home usability program positively impacted participation in social and recreational activities. We defined social and recreational activities as activities that you go out and engage and want to engage in that are like bonus activities. So socializing with friends, maybe going to the movies, going to an event, not things like doctor's appointments. We didn't see much shift in ability to go get groceries or go to the doctor's appointments, things that you kind of have to do often, or you find a way to do no matter what. These were more of these things that people choose and want to do around socializing and recreating. So we saw that program participants reported a 39.5% increase in those social and recreational activities right after they completed the program. And it did, however, kind of go back down longer. We surveyed folks 6 months after the intervention as well, and we did not see that change hold. So there's some reasons for that we could think about. But really what we also saw is within the changes that we made, that bathroom safety and sleeping changes seemed to have the most impact on consumer participation out in the community. And that's perhaps not surprising to many of us. Being able to safely and comfortably use the bathroom, feeling safe and free of risk of falls throughout your house, and being able to sleep well are pretty important things to being able to go about your day and have the energy and the capacity to engage out in the community. Next slide. All right, and just a couple of quotes from participants. These are more kind of about the program, and just a little bit of a reaction that we heard. We've been able to ask these kinds of questions of most of the participants, particularly those who are wrapping up the program now. And the first quote says, "The home usability program kind of gave me a sense of, if I were to do even more accessibility modifications to my home, kind of the process, kind of what would I need to think about and go through prior to making that happen. So making sure that I have the money set aside, obviously, but also contacting people, getting different estimates and things like that." So really learning about, this consumer really learned about how this, all of those different steps of kind of making the change that you want. And then another quote here, "I learned how to better ask some questions. I also learned that there are resources available that you might not initially think of." And I think that leads us well into the next slide, if I'm thinking of this correct. Yeah, so a huge part of this program was, of course, the funding that came from our research grant in order to support it. But not all consumers had programs that fit or had needs that fit within that $350. So we did have some individuals seeking out and have CILs that then formed new relationships in the community in order to help address some of these home usability needs, because that is a huge financial access, or access to finances to make the change, is one of the biggest barrier that many folks experience in needing to make it. It is possible to make a substantial impact for a lower cost, which is something we saw in this. So that actually opens up some exciting opportunities for CILs to develop new community partnerships and relationships. So across the CILs that we worked with, we saw new relationships with local furniture stores to get donations and discounts, durable medical providers, connections with hardware stores. Home Depot has grants to help make repairs and do some of these things, and you can connect up with your local organizations. There were also, of course, national and nonprofit And then also city governments. And we had some folks who did things like Amazon wish lists, donation drives, partnering with AT programs. And then the really important thing in terms of building these, we learned, was developing and using this data. What we hope is that folks will be able to use the data from this project to support some of those local partnerships in order to develop and implement and create their own home usability programs. So that's actually where I am. If we go to the next slide, I would love to take a quick break here and see if anyone has questions. You know, hopefully we'll have more time at the end. I think probably our contact information will go out so that folks can reach out to me if they want the home usability program manual or just have any questions about the program in general. I want to put that out there, that I love to get questions about the research that I help with.
Thank you, Lily, for that presentation. And as Lily mentioned, we are pausing for questions. I did want to clarify briefly that the PowerPoint presentations were sent out yesterday via email, but feel free to contact Jenny at Nclrc to request those PowerPoint slides once again. And her email is Jenny, JENNY at ncil.org. And we're also going to try to put them in the chat today. So pausing for questions as well. So we do have a question for you, Lily, in the chat. And it reads, will your research team in MT reach out to other CILs and Nclrcs to encourage them to use these tools to make many more homes usable for individuals with disabilities?
Oh, that's a great question. And I said I was going to get into next steps in my presentation. I didn't. So that is a next step right there. Yes. I think it's really, this program is based out of Kansas. So for the purposes of this, while I'm in Montana, my research team is in Kansas, which is wonderful. And we are in our kind of final stage of this project. And a lot of that includes packaging and cleaning up and repurposing all of this to go out to you all, to folks at centers. And so while it is actually available for you to go and look at now, we will be spending some time and effort in kind of cleaning it up and getting it all wrapped up and ready to go. So that is the hope. So I think hopefully through continued partnership with Nclrc, we'll be able to start sharing some of those resources as they get out. And again, if you are specifically interested in this, I encourage you to connect with me. And we would love anyone who's interested in helping us review them as well and providing some additional feedback always. So please reach out. But yeah, you'll see more from the Home Usability Program for sure.
Excellent, thank you. And our next question, what is the hypothesis, for why community participation fell between the initial rise and the 6-month follow-up?
It's a really excellent question. Thank you for asking that. And I can also share a manuscript that we wrote and published on this particular study. And it's hard to say, but we think that it was really the value and the importance of working with the Center for Independent Living staff. So the end of the program also marked for many consumers the end of this one-on-one connection. Like a lot of these consumers may still have had an independent living specialist, but they may not have been meeting with them as frequently as they were throughout the course of this project. And so one of our hypotheses is that by kind of ending some of that contact, they kind of returned to normal rather quickly in terms of how. So although you've made your home more usable and you maybe have been going out, it takes time and practice to also rebuild those habits of going out and doing the things that you want to do. And so we're thinking that it could be that you actually you need more sustained support in order to kind of maintain that activity and continue to use your home Also, housing is often really unstable for many folks for many consumers of centers for independent living. So while we may have been able to make a change in someone's home, it's hard to know what would happen in the 6 months after. People may have moved housing dynamics could have changed. There's kind of a lot that's a little unknown in that. So I think what we hope is developing the skills to be able to identify what you need and resources in order to get that are things that are transferable from one housing situation to the next.
Excellent. And this will be our last question for this segment, but if we didn't get to you, please hold your questions for the end of programming as well. We'll try to circle back to you. But our last question for now, do you think architects and community builders will be receptive to home usability and or universal design?
That is an excellent question. Yes and no, perhaps. I think that we will probably see a shift as we see an aging population. I think however, there are so many forces at play in the housing and building market that I think it gets really, really difficult. So I think that's where there's that role of advocates to start working towards visitability regulations at their local municipalities and doing that really important work, because I've been working on this project or something similar for probably 8 years and not a lot has changed. And it can feel like a really intractable issue. And so this is one stopgap measure is essentially how we think of home usability is if you need housing, you need it then, and you don't have a lot of control over what you get. And this is a tool to help make that usable for you. But what we really need is massive, large-scale systemic change around the housing industry. And that's where there's that role of advocacy locally and nationally. And unfortunately, this does not quite address that. So this is just one very small piece of the housing pie. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation, Lily. We learned so much. And next we'll move on to our segment on out and about programming. And that will be presented to us by Kelsey Goddard. Kelsey Goddard is an associate research at the Research and Training Center on Independent Living in Kansas. Kelsey works with centers for independent living across the United States to document the effects that sales are having on consumers with disabilities. Kelsey has presented research findings to the United States Access Board in Washington, D.C., and served as a committee member on the Kansas Commission on Disability Concerns in Topeka, Kansas. Kelsey identifies as a person with a disability and strives to bring awareness to disability concerns through the intersection of research, policy, and advocacy. Kelsey, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Kendra. So my name is Kelsey. My pronouns are she, her. I am a white woman with long brown hair, and I'm wearing a navy shirt. So we're gonna now switch gears and talk about the Out and About program, which was the second larger program under the Pickle project. Next slide, please. So the Out and About is kind of in its name, but it's really a consumer-driven goal-setting program to increase community participation. So STIL staff worked with consumers to really learn what they wanted to do in the community, what motivates them to get out and about. So it was designed to really empower consumers to set goals and then achieve them. And also worked with consumers to break down barriers that they needed to get out and about. So if there was an accessible bus route, but the sidewalk was not accessible all the way, the STIL staff would then kind of work with the consumer to advocate in whatever way to make that route accessible. And so really the research question for Out and About specifically was, does participation in a community-directed community participation intervention increase community participation for consumers with mobility disabilities and other disabilities? Next slide, please. So we also have a website for Out and About. This is outandabout.ku.edu. And I have included a screenshot of the website homepage, but please navigate to the website and check out all the great resources. Next slide, please. So there's a few steps involved with the Out and About process. So first, the SIL staff would make an initial first meeting with the consumer to really work with them to choose a goal. So they kind of talked about, what do you want to do out in your community? What's important to you? And then also kind of identifying resources related to that goal. So if it was advocacy related, kind of learning about specific rights, or even just learning how to use the internet to find reliable resources. And the second meeting after the goal had been identified was setting a SMART goal. And we'll give some examples of that in just a little bit, but really breaking down goals to be very specific instead of broad. And then we also had a way for consumers to track their goals and their progress made weekly. So sometimes goals were a little bit longer, even spanning a month or two that consumers would work on. And so we wanted a way to really write out the different steps involved in meeting that goal. And then the SIL staff did have weekly check-ins with consumers. So that was important. We didn't want to just kind of set the goals, identify the steps, and let them loose. We really wanted the SIL staff to kind of periodically check in to make sure that the consumer was meeting their goals from their timeline, and then addressing any barriers, supporting them to address any barriers. And then their final meeting after they had achieved their goal was really reviewing and celebrating their progress. I feel like sometimes we forget how far we've come after we've met our goal. And so that final meeting is a time and a space to really celebrate together. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, there's a couple goals that consumers set. So for example, a couple consumers set getting healthy as a goal, but really we want to make sure that that's a very specific goal to break down what does getting healthy look like. And so the Out and About goal would then kind of be broken down to say, well, going to the gym and identifying supports to join a gym, which gyms are accessible. And then also kind of even having a timeline to do this by, like, I'll call the gyms by May 1st. And then transportation is another area that consumers kind of wanted to address, but then, breaking that down a little bit more. So, calling and identifying their local paratransit system for the first time. So we had a lot of different goal categories that consumers would work on, including advocacy, home living, information seeking, relationships, getting and staying healthy, and navigating the community. Next slide, please. And so because we're nearing completion of this project, we actually have a list of projects that consumers successfully completed through the Out and About. So some of the examples of these include attending a neurodiverse group, getting their house professionally cleaned, reliable transportation, going to a church service online, getting a service animal, socializing and meeting other people, using social media to stay in touch, learning to use a sewing machine, getting a laptop, engaging in social media, decorating for the holidays, setting up a medication delivery system, setting up a food delivery system, attending a trivia night, going out into the community through fishing trips, getting exercise equipment, attending an art class, strategies for typing to decrease fatigue, and then learning about volunteer opportunities. So just kind of wanted to review that list to give you an idea of the broad range of goals that consumers were interested and worked on. Next slide, please. So this project was very much implemented during the pandemic, and in the name is literally out and about during a time when consumers were very wary of going out and about. So there were implications of the coronavirus pandemic on Pickle. So some of those included, when we first started out too, we were very much thinking of community participation as physical participation outside of the home. So how many hours are you literally outside of your house? And we kind of thought about it and discussed with our SEAL staff that that's not quite as meaningful during a pandemic. So really kind of pivoting, like, what does community participation look like from home? And then also community participation was sometimes described as a luxury. So that was something that we heard from our SEAL staff, that there were a lot of people in emergency crisis during the pandemic, and really they needed to kind of give their attention to meet basic needs. There was a lot of food insecurity, just unmet personal assistance. And so it was one of those things, getting out and about sometimes came second to making sure there was access to food. So we really value our SEAL staff in this project. We see them as the experts on this. And so throughout the process, we really look to them for guidance in the solutions. So, you know, we increased the number of interviews that we were doing to really assess the effects of this program on consumers' lives. We pivoted to community participation from home, and then we learned from SEAL staff about the needs of their consumers. Next slide, please. So a couple quotes to kind of end on today. One consumer said about the Out and About program, "I think definitely the best thing was just kind of the connection with other people. I feel like it really has, for me, at least increased a little bit during this COVID-19 pandemic. We all want to make sure that we stay connected because it can get very lonely when you're either by yourself or with the same group of people constantly." And then another consumer said, "I learned new information, learning about organizations that I didn't know were there, kind of prompting me to actually do a little research of my own, because otherwise I wouldn't have thought about looking up anything about food assistance or mobile meals or anything like that. So it was good, excellent for information, because someday I might need it." Next slide, please. And then we want to open up for any questions from the audience.
We are monitoring the chat, so feel free to put your questions there, and I will read them aloud. Kelsey, thank you so much for that presentation.
Thank you.
We'll give another moment for individuals to put their question in the chat. Otherwise, we will move on to the next segment. All righty. Well, seeing none, we will move on to our next segment. So here with us to present on the National Community Living Resource Center is Ryan Henley. Ryan Henley is a research assistant at both KU's Research and Training Center on Independent Living and the Kansas University Center on Developmental Disabilities. Ryan graduated with his associate's degree in general studies from Johnson County Community College and was a participant in the Project Research Program. At the RTCIL, he assists with literature reviews and works with survey and transcript data for promoting interventions for community living. At this time, Ryan.
Thank you, Kendra. So as she mentioned, my name is Ryan, and I am a white, part African-American, part Asian male with a headset and wearing glasses and wearing a navy blue shirt in an office setting. So welcome to the presentation on the National Community Living Resource Center, also known as the NCLRC. We are excited to have you join us for this presentation. I'll be walking you all through how our center works and what it looks like via our website. When we get to the end of this presentation, we'll hope to use that time, just like before, to answer any questions you all may have for us that we shall answer for you. Next slide, please. So what is the NCLRC? It is a database of interventions of proven value to researchers, consumers, CILs, and others who promote community living for people with disabilities. A link is provided on the slide to the website. It is CL Resources, so CLRESOURCES.org. And on the right is just a snapshot of an image. You're showing many people, few with wheelchairs and some that are helping out with text saying life starts at home, life expands in the community, and find community living tools. Next slide, please. Oh, and also note that this website was developed under the RTC Pickle. This website continues to be updated and augmented. So in terms of curated resources, we have selected some of the best available resources that align with our review of the research on improving community living for people with disabilities. For each resource, we tell you what the resource is, why we choose to include it, who benefits from it, and how it can be used. We also provide a link to the resource or a site where you can access the resource in full. Next slide, please. On this slide, we list several resources and list them into these following items. While these lists contain many useful resources, we wanted to focus on these 3 topics underlined, so advocacy, community living skills, and health. We believe these topics are the main aspects of community living. Next slide, please. So for advocacy resources, here's the link right here, CL Resources. So CLRESOURCES.org/advocacy ADVOCACE-tools TOOLS. So for the list of resources, we list state protection and advocacy systems created by the Administration for Community Living, also known as the ACL. That is a resource that provides information about the 4 ACL protection and advocacy programs. Second listed is the self-advocacy guides created by Disability Rights of Pennsylvania. This one offers guides on abuse, neglect, and exploitation, the ADA, assistive technology, education, employment, housing, and incarceration. Advocacy skill building toolkits created by the University of Montana. This is a resource that provides materials for CIL staff to lead interactive workshops that introduce and teach advocacy skills. And of course, for more advocacy resources, visit our website. And of course, to the right is a screenshot of what you will see once you get to that certain part of the website, part of the web page. Next slide, please. All right, community living skills resources. For this URL, it'll be CL Resources, so CLRESOURCES.org/community COMMUNITY -living -skills SKILLS TOOLS. For these resources, we list the planning for community living created by the National Parent Center on Transition and Employment. This resource explains the tools for youth to adulthood, transition planning, and developing self-determination. Second list Second resource that is listed on here is the Administration for Community Living program areas created by the Administration for Community Living, known as ACL. This resource manages a variety of programs supporting community living options for older adults and people with disabilities. And the third listed on here is Healthy Community Living site created by the Healthy Community Living, also known as the HCL program. This resource, it's a program about all people having opportunities to live well and participate fully in their communities. It was created to be delivered by CILs, the CILs. And once again, for more community living skills resources, visit our website. And to the right is once again a screenshot of what you'll see when you get to that side of the website. Next slide, please. Health resources. For this URL, it'll be CLRESOURCS resources.org/health HEALTH -tools. For these resources, we list the National Disability and Public Health Resource Center for People with Disabilities, known as the NDPHRCDPD, created by the American Association on Health and Disability. This resource includes research abstracts, health disparity data, and links to information of interest to people with disabilities and the people who serve them. The second resource we have is Rehabilitation and Choosing a Facility, created by the Christopher Reeve Foundation. For this resource, this one addresses frequently asked questions about choosing a rehab center and understand the services that can be provided. And then lastly, we have the Improving Access to Healthcare for People with Disabilities, created by the Disability Rights and Educational Defense Fund. This resource helps CIL staff to develop capacity to help people with disabilities access healthcare and long-term services and supports, or LTSS. And yet, once again, for more health resources, you can just visit our website, and to the right is another screenshot of the health webpage of the Nclrc site. Like we said earlier, even though every one of these topics are important for listing resources, we believe that advocacy, community living skills, and health are the three important aspects when it comes to the resource list and community living. Next slide, please. And another way of finding resources is using a search tool that is available on our website under the Find Resources section. With this tool, you can filter by specific keywords and resource type to find what you need that is available. So again, to the right is a screenshot of the Find Resources webpage of the site. Next slide, please. And yep, as before, like the previous two presenters, like Lily and Kelsey, now is the time. If you have any questions, we will be able to answer those during this time.
Thank you, Ryan. Yes, we are continuing to monitor the chat for questions. We'll give just another brief moment for anyone who is still typing their question into the chat for Ryan. I think we do have a question. Let's see here, just a moment. Well, Ryan, right now you're getting kudos in the chat for the amazing resources that you've been compiling for consumers and advocates.
Cool.
Alrighty. Well, if you have more questions for Ryan, feel free to hold those for the end of our session today.
Mm-hmm.
And we will move on to our next segment here. Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you, Kendra.
So next, we will be hearing from Tammy Thiemel. Keisha Walker, and Susan Ferguson on the accessibility experience. So first, to introduce Tammy Themel. Tammy is the CEO of Accessibility. Tammy Themel carries out the strategic plans and vision established by the board of directors. She drives the team at Accessibility towards more is more. More services for more people with disabilities, leading to more independence and ultimately a better community for everyone. She is passionate about pressing for a change in the domestic violence and sexual assault that impacts persons with disabilities, which happens at a much higher rate than the population as a whole. Tammy has an MBA from Purdue. Thank you for being with us today, Tammy. And next, I'll introduce Keisha Walker. Keisha is also at the same center as well, and bringing people and services together is at the heart of what Keisha Walker does at Accessibility, Center for Independent Living in Central Indiana. Keisha is the Inclusive Employment Advocate, BIN liaison for the Inclusive Employment Program at Accessibility. This program opens conversations with people of all disabilities at any point along their employment journey. Keisha has a degree in psychology and pre-med from IUP UI and her BIN certification from Indiana Institute on Disability and Community. Her passions include promoting access to medicine in underserved communities and advocating for inclusive and equitable employment for people with disabilities. Keisha is passionate about working alongside her peers, with disabilities and playing a part in helping the marginalized communities grow and prosper. Thank you for being with us, Keisha. And then lastly, we have Susan Ferguson. Susan Ferguson is the Chief Program Officer at Accessibility, the Center for Independent Living in Central Indiana. Accessibility advocates with and empowers all people with disabilities through supports and services. This work allows Susan to live out her personal values of social justice, employment, dignity, and curiosity. Susan has spent her 30-year career in social services and nonprofit leadership. She has developed a reputation for effective supervision and team development, resulting in improved retention and performance. Susan's experience includes leadership in family preservation, mental health services, victim services, and disability services. Susan earned her MBA from the Western Michigan University and CFRM, or Certificate in Fundraising Management, from the Indiana University Lilly's Family School of Philanthropy. So at this time, we welcome you all to share your presentation for this segment. Thank you for being with us again.
Thank you. I am Tammy Themel. I am a middle-aged white woman with short dark hair and glasses and a pair of dangly earrings. You'll only see me briefly at the moment. We'd like to start all of our presentations by letting you know that as people with disabilities, we make mistakes. And sometimes those are misgendering or misusing a word or just not being very clear. And we view it as a true kindness to let us know about those things so that we can do better. I am going to turn this over to Keisha for slide 35, please.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Keisha. I am a white woman in my early 30s. I'm wearing a teal sweater and a black shirt, and I am also wearing a headset and glasses. So, as Tammy said, I am an advocate at Accessibility, and we are a Center for Independent Living, and I was also one of the Pickle research assistants. So I want to talk to you guys about what it was like working with our consumers. And I think it's first important to understand that I was a consumer. In 2019, my mom passed away suddenly. This was very shortly after losing my father a few years prior. So at that time, I was giving up and I was feeling the weight of my grief. It was around that time that I met my advocate at Accessibility. She was the best. She was one of the first people that I met that also used a wheelchair. So we quickly became best friends, at least in my mind. She inspired me, and I loved how accomplished her life was, and I was amazed by how independent she was. So it gave me hope again. And when Pickle was introduced at Accessibility, she shared the information with me and invited me to participate. To say I was excited was probably an understatement. Before taking my leave of absence from school, I had been doing research and I loved it. So this gave me the opportunity to contribute again. So I decided to participate, and I quickly set my goals. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I chose the home usability program first. At that time, I acquired two animals after my mom passed, and there was a lot of hair. So I chose that I needed a Roomba to help me alleviate from vacuuming and having to fight with the cord getting stuck in my tires. So that was my home usability goal, and it gave me so much more energy to continue on. And I started working on my out and about goal. Now for this one, I aimed for the moon. I decided that I wanted to I have been muted. I am so sorry. Would it be better to start over?
Keisha, it's Tammy. You're only muted for a couple of seconds.
Oh, good. Okay, I must have hit a button. I'm so sorry. Where could you tell me where I left off?
Your dogs and lots of hair.
Oh, okay. So I chose the Roomba as my to put the funds towards, and that helped me alleviate from having to vacuum and fight with the vacuum cord getting stuck in my tires. And it gave me so much more energy to be able to continue on. So the next goal was my out and about goal, and for this one, I aimed for the moon. I decided that I wanted to obtain my driver's license and go back to school. So I did. I went through all of the training and researched how I was going to obtain an accessible vehicle, and with the help of my advocate, I accomplished my goal. Once they unleashed me on the streets, I was able to go back to school and finish my degree. And it made me think about where I wanted my career path to go. And I loved the work that Accessibility did and the good that they gave to the community. So the Pickle project essentially helped me get out and about and find my career. So in the first picture, I actually apologize. In the third picture, these are out of order. You see me the first time behind the wheel. My advocate actually drove me to this appointment and insisted that she take this picture. This was a milestone. In the middle picture is when I obtained my driver's license. I texted my advocate promptly at 8 a.m. once I received it in the mail. And the last picture is the first time that I drove myself and my dog to a local park and we hiked around the woods. So with that in mind, I came into this project as a Center for Independent Living staff member with the mindset of a consumer, and it helped me understand the unique challenges of a consumer from their perspective. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Okay, so what was it like working now that I was gainfully employed? I Incorporating the Pickle project into the accessibility culture was seamless. We were suddenly presented with this new opportunity to fund the unique needs of our consumers, and it was such a great privilege. And it allowed us to looking beyond keeping our consumers independent. It opened the perspective of different ways that we could achieve that. So for example, we started considering home safety and the different ways that we could address their pain levels and fatigue levels, all the while keeping them inspired to continue leading their independent lives. So the Pickle program allowed us to look at our consumer care in a different light. Instead of frequent check-ins from the advocate, we encourage our consumers to log their progress while they were working on their goals. Yes, this collected the research, but it became blaringly aware of how this inspired and motivated them. They were now taking charge of documenting their development. We saw that the consumers were contacting us more, and they were so excited to share their updates and talk with us through the obstacles that they were facing. Through every step, the consumers actively communicated with their advocates about how hard they were working and all of this effort that they were putting into their goals. And we were able, like I said, to brainstorm together how they could overcome this obstacle, and that got applied to other obstacles in their life. And that led to more conversations and continued conversation even after they finished the project. Towards the end, we got to celebrate with them about all of their success and achievements. And we talked about different ways that they could carry this on. And to this day, I still talk to many of my consumers about how awesome and hard they worked on this project. They keep me updated. So I also want to point out that the impact of COVID, and I know we'll talk about barriers later, but a large part of it was how we could overcome the COVID pandemic. And I'll be honest with you, we scrambled to accommodate and innovate ways that we could stay connected with our consumers while also staying safe ourselves. Isolation was a major issue that we saw. Many of our consumers were not having their basic needs met, and we brainstormed many times different methods that we could help alleviate that, and how we could give to our community. We also noticed that there was a huge increase in the demand for virtual support. When the research got paused briefly, we weren't able to visit any of our consumers or make physical contact, and that's a huge part of what we do at Accessibility. We are out in the community. So we wanted to when we started checking in, it wasn't phone calls. We made it a point to have Zoom calls. Oftentimes that was the only socialization that the consumers would have that day or that week sometimes. So many of the consumers were discouraged. It gave them hope, but they still struggled with their mental health, and it was rough. But when the project resumed, we saw that their goals shifted, as we had talked about, into how they were going to engage with the community. We started brainstorming how they could attend virtual gatherings. Accessibility hosted some peer support groups. We got them connected with churches. And a lot of goals were to better their physical health. Many people had picked up unhealthy eating patterns and asked to use the funds towards gym equipment and different exercise assistive tech. But I will hand this off to Tammy to talk about how we funded the project.
I'm guessing none of you are surprised that we snapped up Keisha as a staff member as soon as she was willing to come work for us. Thank you, Keisha. This is Tammy Thummel again. If you go to the next slide, please. The picture you see on the side of your screen is a shot of a bathroom. It's looking into a shower stall. It has a cabinet with a mirror, a medicine cabinet, and a white ceiling and a very bright blue paint job. And I actually want to start by talking about that bright blue paint job. So this consumer was able to have some remodeling work done to ensure they could continue to live in their home. And we were able to enmesh the Pickle funds that we had for the consumer and to add in some CARES Act dollars, some donor dollars, some, you know, what we all do in nonprofit is that pool of collected monies that we can use to something. In addition to those collected monies, we also made some partnerships with some handy persons that were really excited and willing to get involved and get in their hands in, if you will, to this process of keeping people independent and living independently. The consumer for whom this bathroom repair and remodel was done is an exemplar of the funding was all in place, the program was in place, the people were in place. But here's where the independence came in. When the handy person asked the homeowner what color they wanted their bathroom painted, she looked at this person with incredulity and sincerely asked, "Do you mean I get to pick the color?" And he was so excited at how excited she was that he went out and brought back in those little slides. They have little snapshot or little pieces of paint chips. And they look like all of the colors of the rainbow. And this was the color she chose. So Pickle is beyond just getting people in the community or increasing their home or connecting them with an advocate. All of those things are amazingly wonderful things. But it also gives a taste of independence that's different. It's you have autonomy and control, even in something as simple as picking your paint color. Continuing this program is key. It is one of our metrics this year, is figuring out how to continue the funding, to continue to take what we've learned from this program and move it forward. And we will continue, we're launching some fundraising to make this a reality. It's tough. Honestly, sometimes in Central Indiana, we can struggle a little bit with donors and grantors to understand that someone who owns their home needs our assistance. There can be some opacity to their generosity, if you will. So we are trying to increase that awareness of just how big an improvement this makes in people's lives. Many of the people in the Pickle program, as well as many of our other consumers who have been able to benefit by some of this work we've done this year, are gainfully employed for the first time in years. They're out volunteering. They're helping us. So it isn't just one little piece. And if you walk away with anything, it's Pickle has opened doors and opened eyes. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, please. The picture here on slide 38 is talking about barriers, and there's a person with their hands on a table with a watch. And the idea here is you're sitting down trying to figure something out. So what we're trying to figure out here is how do we make sure that the work we're doing goes to the mid to highest risk individuals? And Susan Ferguson, who you'll hear from in just a minute, has created an amazing wraparound process to make sure that we are as transparent as possible and that the limited funds go to the highest needs, if you will. And as Keisha mentioned with COVID, the issues were not just with our consumers, it was also with our funders, it was with our own staff. COVID created some really major problems, but there is never a problem without a little bit of silver lining. And the silver lining here was CARES Act money that centers received. I should qualify, some centers received. We were able to use those one-time only dollars and do things like give a gift bag to all of our consumers over the holidays. And again, there was nothing earth-shattering in the bag, but it was, we are thinking of you, we're here for you. We were able to buy groceries and those home modifications, increase their access to technology. You heard Keisha talk about seeing someone's face, even like we are here today on Zoom, was hugely important. But you couldn't do it if they didn't have internet access and if they didn't have a laptop or some other mechanism like an iPad to connect. So we were able to do all of those things. Obviously, more is more, and we do have to start with basic needs. But we are doing more, and the Pickle project is a part of that. And what you've done will continue, and we're incredibly grateful that you allowed us to be a part of this. I'm going to turn it over now to Susan Ferguson to take you into some testimonials.
Thank you, Tammy. Yes, this is Susan, and I am a white woman with dark, short hair with a black top on, and I use she, her pronouns. And you can forward to the next slide, please. So I start here with a couple of testimonials, and based on what has already been presented today, some of these will probably not be a surprise to you. So the first one says, thank God they got organizations like you guys. Like there's not too much out there for people with disabilities, you know, and either you've got to have a will of iron to see through it all, or, you know, get a little help up from organizations. And I just want to brag a little bit about our staff who were able to help people and continue to help people who call wade through some of the red tape, for lack of a better term, that that they need to deal with. And so our staff were kind of able to help them overcome some of those obstacles on the way. With the home usability program, I felt like I was going to feel better. I felt more optimistic about my health. I felt like it was making a difference. What a compliment to the services that were provided to that person, or the you know, what that person received. So great to hear them talk about how helpful this program was, and to increase the optimism, as you've heard Tammy and Keisha mention about how COVID was the opposite of optimism. So it's great to hear that optimism when they were able to participate in the program. The last two are, I learned that I could do more than I thought I could do, and I learned how to better ask some questions. They're great quotes from consumers to see how they could, you see how this is empowerment. This isn't just we solved a problem for them and then we're done and out of their lives. This is giving them the power to be able to advocate on their own behalf. So I love those testimonials, and just want to say how much I appreciate the staff and the work that they did on with the Pickle program. And so on the next slide, just want to mention kind of what our future planning is and how we hope to continue. So even at the end of this Pickle project, how we want to infuse this into what accessibility does in the future. Tammy mentioned our home modification committee, which is, so now when we review a request for a home modification, we ask one of our board members, an advocate who's not connected with the case, and one of our leadership team to join the advocate who's advocating on behalf of this consumer to have a conversation. And our hope with that is obviously engaging the board and staff in the process, but also doing things like guarding against bias. Are we fairly reviewing who gets home modifications with limited resources, right? We can't do it all. So how do we decide? Providing an opportunity for the story, not just the data. So rather than making a decision based on a request for funding, we have the opportunity for the advocate to really tell the story and represent the consumer in the room. And then again, just garnering that input to ensure the best use of our limited resources. And then we're connecting these stories with engaging donors and funders. So some of the stories that you heard today, even Keisha's story, what a great example that we can take that to a funder or a donor and really talk to them about what a difference this makes in people's lives. And then we are continuing to build partnerships. So you've heard many of those partnerships mentioned here in this presentation today. So looking for additional contractors who will work with us and maybe help us overcome some barriers, connecting with the community and consumers, and even other service providers. So if there are other people in the community doing home modification type work, how can we work together to make sure that we're making the best use of those, again, very limited resources? And then finally, just want to mention that I see this as a barrier buster, right? So when we are working with consumers who are ready to work and do what they need to do and want to get maybe employed or out in the community again. We want to be able to, but they just have that one barrier in the way. How do we help them overcome that barrier, bust through that, and then truly empower them to be able to do what they'd like to do? Yeah, so kind of that enforcing that I can do this if just this one last obstacle was taken out of the way. And I see Kendra coming on, but I just want to mention the picture, which is one of the handymen who helps set accessibility and is working on a project there in building a ramp for one of our consumers. Thank you so much. Ready for questions, I think.
Actually, I think we're going to rotate to our last session of the day, and then maybe if we have like a few more moments for questions, we will do that at that time. We appreciate you all at Accessibility Experience for sharing your expertise with us today. So moving on to our last segment for today, we will be hearing consumer case studies from Randy Gray and Lindsay Coon. So Randy Christine Gray is a graduate research assistant who does work around exercise and physical fitness for individuals with disabilities, particularly physical disabilities. She is currently in her PhD program for counseling and psychology at the University of Kansas. She holds a Master of Science in Education for Health Education and Psychology of Physical Activity, and holds 2 BAs in both psychology and in writing, rhetoric, and digital studies. Randy has previously served as a health educator working with individuals with disabilities to improve their physical health. She continues to work in research on mental and physical health and is working towards her certification as a certified mental performance consultant. Thank you for being with us, Randy. And lastly, we have Lindsay Coon. Lindsay Coon joined the RTC as Associate Director in October of 2009. She holds a PhD in sport and exercise science with a focus on social psychology of sport and physical activity from the University of Northern Colorado. She comes to the RTC after serving as a postdoctoral research associate at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, and her research explored the exercise challenges and needs of adults aging with long-term mobility and sensory disabilities, and evaluated the potential of various technologies to support and motivate physical activity participants. At the RTC, she focuses on physical activity and disability and assists with measuring the impact of home usability and out and about interventions on participants' home usability, community engagement, problem-solving skills, and self-determination. With that, I will turn it over to you guys.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Randy Gray. I am a Black woman in my mid-20s with a light blue shirt on and long box braids. So with the time, we just kind of want to go over some really big points. And we hope that you guys get to read through some of these amazing quotes that we talked about. And so we interviewed lots of consumers that participate in the Home Usability and Out and About project. And on the screen, you will see 2 pictures. One is the reclining chair with lift and heat capabilities. This is also pictured, the first picture that you will see. The second picture is a Ring doorbell, which is compatible with Amazon Echo, which is also called an Alexa. And that is a video security system that records outside of your home and can connect to the Alexa. Next slide. So again, I hope you guys can go ahead and read through these later on, but some big notes that we just wanted to harp on is that many of our participants were doing this during COVID times. And so several of our participants, when we went and interviewed them, We found out that due to domestic violence or loss of work, they were at risk of homelessness. And so even having things like the recliner chair kind of was pointless because they didn't have those basic needs met. But we also heard that people were able to decrease their pain for it, and they were also wanting it because it was able to help them on their bad days. Next slide. We also heard about the effects of the recliner chair, which was they got to increase their dignity, increase independence, increase participation, and decrease pain. Again, I hope you are able to read some of these amazing quotes. Next slide. We also wanted to give you some examples about the Ring doorbell with video capabilities. So the reason why a lot of our consumers picked this was because it was, they were able to find safety, have home security, and some of their mobility concerns were addressed. For example, they were able to not go to the front door and stay seated and see who was at the door instead of trying to run downstairs and be at a risk for falling or risk of injury. Next slide, please. And the same thing with the effects of the Ring doorbell. We just heard that it increased their safety concerns, both when they were at home and when they were out and about, and it also decreased exertion. Next slide. And lastly, with the home usability part of this, we asked if money were no object, what else would they get? And we got a variety of information. But one of the biggest things that we learned from this was that we needed basic needs met. So one person talked about being in an attic and not having heat or AC. And so that was a big thing. And so now I'm going to send it over to Lindsay to talk about out and about.
Thanks, Randy. Hi, everyone. I'll jump right in so that we can try to wrap up here. If you could go to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So we talked to consumers about their out and about goals in detail. They had a lot of choice and control, as has already been explained, about their particular goal. And we wanted to highlight two of the more common out and about goals. And this includes accessing and learning to use technology, and then exercising. Next slide, please. So when we asked consumers why they had a desire to access and learn technology, we learned that obviously a lot of this had to do with COVID. So consumers had to deal with a lot of like isolation and changing how they participate in the community and how they felt connected to others. So we learned that a lack of access to information or even sense of isolation and lack of community participation were common themes, and hence the desire for technology goals for out and about. Next slide, please. We found that the effects of learning, accessing and learning to use these technologies allowed consumers to increase their access to information. They were able to obtain goods and services that they need due to an increase in delivery options. And increase their connection to family and friends, as well as their community participation through these technologies. And I'm afraid I'm at time here, so I'm just checking in to make sure I need to stop or if I should keep going.
You can still take another like 30 seconds or so. And I know you only have like 2 more slides, so
okay.
Something like that. So finish off the slides. We probably won't do a Q&A. But if people do want to submit questions later, that's fine. And then we'll close out as soon as you're done with your slides.
Okay, thank you. Next slide then, please. So consumers also set a lot of exercise goals related to the Out and About program. When we asked consumers why they chose this goal, there were obviously a lot of health reasons for it. So particularly weight loss and concerns about mobility limitations. Next slide, please. The out and about goal of participating in exercise, it did serve to help increase mobility as well as community participation from our consumers. Next slide, please. So in general here, we just want to conclude that, the pickle process can be used to more broadly help consumers to address home usability and community participation needs. We learned specifically that consumers' needs are complex and individualized, and yet many can be addressed with these targeted interventions and design efforts to promote home usability and getting out and about into the community. So we asked consumers about their overall experience with the Pickle program, and we just wanted to share some of these final really positive quotes on the effects of this intervention. And I'll stop there.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for that wonderful presentation to share with us some of the consumer case studies and the successes that you had. And at this time, I'd like to close today's program by thanking all of our participants for being with us today, for your time. And thank you to those who have attended this session today as well, who've engaged us with so many questions. If we did not get to your question, feel free to submit those to Jenny at Nclrc. And her email again is jenny@ncil.org. And we will do our best to get those addressed by our presenters today. And lastly, just a reminder that this session was recorded today, and we will send out an email to all registrants with the link to this recording, as well as the slide presentations that were shared today. And with that, I wish you all a great day. Thank you.